One of these days I'm going to learn how to do quiet audio appropriately. There we go. Somebody in the back. Yes. Okay. Well, maybe, I'm a lefty, so maybe that's what it is. I can't do it with my right hand. It just doesn't like feel right. But now this feels totally comfortable. Okay. All right. So this is Dr. Radhika Reddy. She's a professor in the biology department, and she's also in charge of our RLCs, research learning communities, and she's going to be talking about research.
Thank you, Carlos. As Carlos said, my name is Radhika, and I work here at PSU in the biology department, but I also am very proud to be part of the EXITO program. I'm one of 4 people here at PSU that help coordinate our research placements and also do some other work around the timeline and logistics of your RLC placements, which I'm going to tell you guys about today. So I presume you have a lot of questions. That's typically the case here at orientation about your research placements. So I encourage you to dive in when you see a relevant topic on the PowerPoint around which you have a question, to just raise your hand and ask it, because this is how you get this information from me. So I'm going to start with giving you a little introduction to our Research Enrichment Committee. This is here at PSU, so those of you guys who are coming from other institutions will find that you have a program coordinator at your institution who does much of the work that I'm going to talk about today and can answer a lot of the related questions around your research placements. But here at PSU, we have 2 co-directors of the Research Enrichment Core. Those are my bosses, along with Carlos and Tom, Dr. Keller and Dr. Crespo. We have Dr. Cynthia Morris, who is a professor at OHSU, and she is in fact the assistant dean of the School of Medicine up there, so we're really grateful to have her working on EXITO with us. And she's also the senior associate director of the OCT Optree, is what they call it, which is a research institute associated with OHSU. Also, a co-director of the Research Enrichment Core is Dr. Greg Mitchell, who is a professor of physics here at PSU. So the 2 of them can answer your questions, and you're also going to get a chance to interact with Dr. Mitchell tomorrow during your RLC panel. And then the Research Enrichment coordinators are Katie Lasowski at OHSU, who's a research administrator, and I here at PSU can tell you about your research placements, whether you are at PSU or at another institution. So I like to show this slide all the time. I see some of our partner faculty nodding their head because I just showed it to them yesterday, because I find the pipeline into your research placement can feel a little bit complicated because we have so many institutions represented here today. So we have our 4-year institutions, including PSU, University of Hawaii. This is an old slide that says Manoa. We have other partners from the University of Hawaii here as well, from Leeward and West Campus, West Oahu Campus. And then, of course, University of Alaska at Anchorage and University of Guam. So it is at these 4-year institutions where you will do your research work with EXITO. Some of you guys are coming from our 2-year partner institutions, PCC, Clark, Chemeketa, American Samoa, Clackamas, and Northern Marianas. And will transfer to these 4-year institutions at between your 2nd and 3rd year to complete your research work. So in advance to that transfer, you guys are going to complete a gateway course during year 2. So you guys are between year 1 and year 2, between your freshman and sophomore year. During year 2, you'll complete a gateway course, which will give you a general introduction to research. You'll do things like be introduced to technical research literature, also research ethics, and some additional programming that'll help you transition into your research placement a little more easily. So that's going to happen during year 2, between year 2 and year 3. That's to say between your sophomore and your junior year. You'll make that transfer and engage in what's called summer induction training, which is going to further help you segue into your research placement. And that's when you'll begin your research placement just prior to year 3, just prior to your junior year, and throughout the 3rd academic year, you'll be doing research in a research lab. So I think now is a great time to talk about what a research learning community is. You guys might begin to have gotten some sense of what this means. As a community, it's going to include a lot of different types of personnel, including a principal investigator. Do you guys know what a principal investigator is? Some of you maybe not. The principal investigator, as this pyramid might indicate, is the person on top. So this person is going to have a large amount of responsibility and largely determine the direction of the research focus in the research learning community. You'll also see postdocs and lab managers. These are more senior level positions. people who are also going to be contributing to similar research questions and may be involved in training of other personnel. You'll also see graduate students. These are people who are working towards a master's degree or a PhD, a doctoral degree. Lab technicians, programmers, undergraduate researchers, of which you will fall into that category. And this is a little bit of a dated slide. I have dishwasher. That might be a job that has been replaced by a machine at this point. It used to be that we had these really tiny test tubes that people were constantly washing out, and they didn't get super clean in dishwashers, but now we use test tubes less for one thing, and we have better dishwashers that can wash these test tubes. But I digress. So let's take a look at what I call the academic hierarchy, what that means for you in a training structure, because you have different people doing very different jobs. When jobs are very big, sometimes it takes a specialization of a team of people who work on those jobs to get it all done. And that can feel pretty complicated. But everybody is generally working towards a common goal. So a couple of common goals is to keep the research funded by institutions like the NIH or the NSF. Do you guys know what the NIH is? National Institutes of Health. They are paying for your burritos today and this whole program. They often fund a lot of the type of research that will be done in your research learning communities, because this program has a focus on biomedical research, and the National Institutes of Health is a large funding agency for this type of research. But really the goal of all of academic research is publication, to be able to communicate and share the things that you've learned with the world around us. And that happens because of all of the people working on these projects, including the principal investigator, that come in a variety of personalities. And so part of my presentation today is going to involve you making some choices around the kind of personalities that you choose to surround yourself with, so that you can have the most productive experience in your research learning community. However, we do see some common themes amongst all of the principal investigators, these PIs. These are people who tend to be very, very busy, because they are largely in charge of making sure that there's enough money to actually do this research, which involves writing grants, an incredibly competitive process, in addition to overseeing the day-to-day operations of the lab, which involve doing the work that results in publication, and making sure that everybody is collaborating effectively. So what I would say to you is, it's a great idea to reach out to principal investigators with whom you're interested in working, but don't be discouraged if you don't get an email response right away, because they are very, very busy, and a non-response is not necessarily indicative of a lack of interest. So we have a couple different types of principal investigators. They fall into category of assistant professor, which is a non-tenured track or non-tenured professor. An associate professor, which would be a tenured professor. This is going to be someone who's a little more advanced in their career and has earned this rank based on a demonstrated history of productivity in the research community. And then finally, you have full professors like Dr. Keller and Dr. Crespo, who have been promoted to the highest rank as a result of a long career of demonstrating academic productivity. So those are the principal investigators. You then have your more advanced professional personnel. Not all research learning communities will have all of these personnel. So all of our communities are going to have a principal investigator. However, really typically the larger RLCs will have lab managers or long-term employees of the lab who tend to have more advanced degrees. Sometimes they have doctorates, which is often the case at OHSU. Sometimes they have master's or bachelor's degree, and they tend to oversee day-to-day operations. This could be the person that ends up training an undergraduate researcher. We also have postdoctoral fellows, which is exactly what it sounds like, post for after, meaning after the doctorate, after a person has earned their PhD, there's a transitional training period before they become principal investigators, during which they can do a lot of the same things that PIs do, which is apply for grants, write papers, manage other personnel, but this gives them a little bit of a career-building transitional period before they achieve the rank of principal investigator. And they may or may not work with undergrads. We see lots of postdocs training undergrads and lots of postdocs not training undergrads. And then finally we get to the graduate students who are either pursuing their masters or PhDs. Graduate students often train undergraduate students. They tend to be the feet on the ground in a research learning community. Their hands they are less consumed with writing grants, although that's not always the case. which gives them more time to be actively engaged in the actual research of a research learning community. And then that brings us to the undergraduates, who can do all kinds of things. They can wash glassware, they can prepare media, they can do independent research projects, which is really where we'd like to see our EXITO scholars get by the time they finish their research experience. Or they can do any combination of the above. Working in a research lab really requires the acquisition of an advanced skill set, and oftentimes mentors will make that investment in their undergraduates when they see their undergraduates making sort of the return investment in the research learning community and committing themselves to being a productive member of the community itself, which is why I have here in bold, the impression that you make on your research mentor is going to have a large impact on the amount of independence and the kind of responsibilities that you get in the research learning community. So this is really a two-way street, this relationship that a mentee has with their mentor. So do you guys have any questions on the academic personnel before we move on to the nuts and bolts of your experience? All right, so here's the timeline. Here's how it's going to happen, which can be confusing, but it's actually very efficiently summarized in this graph. So going from left to right, our x-axis here is our timeline, with each little chunk here representing your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years. So you guys are right here between your freshman and sophomore year at the summer orientation. So after you return to your home institutions, next year you guys will take the gateway course that I told you about earlier in the presentation, give you a bit of an introduction to the world of research. You'll then be placed, I think I can move through this. That's where we are. And this is really a good time for you to start considering what it is that you want to get from your research experience, because you get an awful lot from these experiences. It's not just about doing the work and producing this academic literature as a result of this work, although that is a very big deal and it's a wonderful accomplishment. You guys are also going to be gaining a lot from your mentorship relationships, your relationship with your mentor, which is going to provide you an opportunity to engage in some professional development, some networking, some skill building that will likely translate into an advantage that is not just going to be in your research learning community. You'll also get a chance to cultivate some of your research interests. So this is a list of 5 that I'm going to show you over and over again throughout this presentation, because I think it's really important that you guys understand that from your research placement, you're getting so much more than the opportunity to do research. You're going to have this opportunity to build relationships that can benefit you throughout your life. So summer orientation, you're here. You're 40%, 30% through it, so congratulations on that. After you return to your home institution, you guys are going to take the Gateway course, which is going to be a nice introduction to the world of research. You should still be thinking about what it is that you want to get from the research experience in addition to the particular subject area that you want to study. So think really hard about what kind of relationships you want to develop. Prior to the summer after your sophomore year, so between years 2 and 3, you guys are going to get your research placement. So you're going to be matched with an RLC, a research learning community that hopefully is going to be aligned with some of your research interests, and also provide you with these relationships that we're talking about that are so important, these mentors, which are not just the principal investigator, but the other personnel in your research learning community that can really help you develop into a more mature academic researcher. So the process of being placed in an RLC is going to vary from institution to institution. So I encourage you to reach out to your program coordinators to understand a little bit about that process. So here at PSU, we do an RLC fair that happens in the spring of the sophomore year, where scholars get a chance to meet a lot of the different RLCs that we have available, and based on their interests and the match that they make with these mentors, we're able to make research placements between a mentor and a scholar. So one thing that's going to be really helpful for you guys is to check out the EXITO website. So you can navigate to the listing or an inventory of the research learning communities at the host institutions, at various host institutions, by going on the EXITO website and looking under the Faculty Development tab, you can also Google Build EXITO RLCs, and it's the 4th listing that'll come up for you. The top 3 listings will get you pretty darn close to this page, but I find that Google is my go-to for information. So, and this is what this looks like. What happened there? So, can I possibly click this to show them what that looks like? Yeah. And then just click one of these tabs. So, by navigating to your host institution and to the subject area, you'll find a list of RLCs, which may have sort of varying levels of being current depending on how many new RLCs have been developed, and you can check with your program coordinators at your local institution to find out how current this listing is. This is a great way to learn a little bit about what kind of RLCs we have available to you, what kind of work that they do, and what you might have available to you depending on how your interest levels evolve as you move through your academic careers. So I might need help to navigate. Yeah. So do you guys have questions about this process of research placements? Anyone have an idea of who they want? Yes?
I heard that there's going to be some kind of like open fair.
You heard that there's going to be some kind of open fair is the question. Yes, if you are at PSU, we have an RLC fair that happens in April, so it's the first Friday of spring term. And we have as many of our RLCs come to this fair as possible, and you guys get a chance to walk around and talk to them in person and get a barometer for how good of a personality fit you might have with the various mentors. But again, this happens differently at different institutions. At institutions where I know some of the smaller programs give you a higher degree of flexibility around who you can develop relationships with to form new RLCs or new research learning communities. Other questions? Yes? Good question, because that's something to think about. So the question was, is there one scholar per RLC, or are there multiple scholars per RLC? So some, and in some cases, there can be multiple RLCs per scholar. We have a couple of those situations. So all of those varieties can exist, and that's definitely something you're going to want to think about when you select your RLCs. If you'd like to be placed in a cohort with other scholars, you might take a look at RLC or learning communities that have existing EXITO scholars already placed there. And some scholars really like that because they get a chance to collaborate with researchers that are closer to their own stage of professional development. So that can be really positive for some scholars. Other scholars prefer to be the only child and get a lot of attention from their mentors. So that's certainly something you should think about when you think about the placements that you choose. Other questions? Feel free to interrupt me at any points during this presentation, because I want to make sure that you guys have a strong sense of what's coming for you. All right, so getting to year 3, so this is going to be the summer before your junior year. That's really when it all starts. So at this point, you'll have your research placement. You'll have a sense of what kind of work you're going to be doing through conversations that you're having with your mentor. And in the month prior to the start of the academic year, you'll actually get to do some research through what's called the Summer Induction Program. And during this program, you'll do about 16 hours per week, or 64 hours total of research. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to find your place in the research learning community before you're going to pile on an academic load in addition to your research commitments. So it's really a nice transitional program. We also have some workshop programming, about 16 hours of workshop programming, in which we'll reinforce many of the things that you've already learned during the Gateway program, talk to you about research ethics, help you learn to read and properly interpret academic literature, and also talk about how you can sort of set yourself up to succeed around time management when you're trying to juggle both what's essentially a job which is your EXITO research with being a full-time student, which can be challenging, but we've seen many students succeed in this model. So that is the summer induction. Then you move to your academic year, which is the junior year is your first academic year, where you're both doing research and doing your schoolwork. So we ask that you guys do 10 hours per week during each academic term of research, in addition to maintaining your status as a full-time student. Throughout this process, you're going to want to continue to think about how you build relationships with the people with whom you work in your research learning community, so that you can take advantage of some of the softer professional development skills and networking skills that can really set you up for success when you leave college. So I went the wrong way. Then you'll get to your year 4, which is the summer for your senior year. And this is where most scholars do most of the work. You're essentially going to be working full-time for the summer in your research learning community. You do about 250 hours, you do exactly 250 hours of research. You do 50 hours of workshop programming to continue to reinforce the things that you learned during the gateway and induction experiences. And that is the summer before your senior year. You'll have some momentum from having worked in your RLC throughout the entirety of your junior year. And we find that really sets scholars up for productivity in this later stage of their EXITO career. And then finally, you have your senior academic career. You do 2 terms, 10 hours a week for about 2/3 of your senior year, when you'll finish up your research experience with EXITO, continuing to think about mentorship and networking, because that is going to be tremendously helpful for you guys when you're applying to graduate schools and medical schools, getting things like recommendations and taking advantage of the relationships that your RLC collaborators have outside of your host institution to help set you up to do what it is that you want to do, which is really what this program is all about. So I really want you guys to think hard during the remainder of this session about what you want to get out of your relationships with the people who work in your research learning community. And mentoring is really a strong focus for us here in the EXITO program, because we, all of us in EXITO, believe that it's these mentorship relationships, that these mentoring relationships can teach you so much more than just the basic skills associated with academic research. So they can teach you how to navigate complex professional relationships, complex professional problems, things you just can't learn in a textbook, but that really put you at a tremendous competitive advantage if you have these kind of skills when you move on to the next phase of your career. So I want you guys to really think hard about what kind of people you learn the most from. So a couple of slides ago, I showed you 9 different personality types of principal investigators. Not everyone learns from the same personality type, so many people like to have a lot of hands-on interactions with their mentors, and they learn a lot that way. That's wonderful. I fall into this category where I like to see my mentor once a month and get a pat on the back or some redirection. I see Carlos laughing back there. So different people work well in a variety of different kinds of environments, and there is someone who's going to benefit from each of those 9 types of personalities that we saw on the PI slide. So you got to figure out which type of personality segues best with your learning style. So that's mentorship. You want to also think about all of the professional development opportunities that you're going to get as a result of your relationships with all of the collaborators in your research learning communities. So you're not just going to be going into this community every day and doing research, you're also going to get chances to present at professional conferences. You're also going to get chances to interact with other personnel outside of the research learning community. These are relationships that your mentor or postdocs or lab managers might have with other individuals. So now all of a sudden you have access to their network of professionals. You're also going to get a chance to develop a personal portfolio, an academic portfolio, because you might publish papers that you can then put on your resume or on your CV. You might create posters or PowerPoint presentations that you can then add to your sort of wheelhouse of presentations that you can do in various environments. You're also going to benefit from the variety of experiences that other people in your RLCs have had. So they can tell you if certain choices didn't work for them and other choices did work for them, and that's information that you can then use to inform the choices that you make to set yourself up for success. Networking. I think I've touched on networking throughout this presentation. Networking, this idea that you are going to get to know a lot of different people, and when you know those different people, they are going to have or be able to create opportunities for you. So they can do things like write letters of reference. So some of our senior scholars here can attest to how incredibly important these letters of references are for getting jobs, for getting into graduate school, getting into medical school, or even just making connections with people outside of your own institution. So really helpful to be able to know people who can vouch for you. You also get the chance to collaborate with not just the people inside your research learning community, but the people that they know. So there are so many different kinds of people in this world who know so many different kinds of interesting things, and this plugs you in to that network of getting to learn what it is that other people know. So networking is incredibly important. Skill building, of course, you can't do the work without the skills. I put this third, not because I don't think skill building is important, but I do think that sometimes undergraduates think that skill building is the only thing that the research experience is about, and I really want to emphasize that relationships are a huge part of your experience. But skill building is wonderful. I learned statistics in my first undergraduate research experience, and I'm so glad that I got the pain of that out of the way so I could move on with the rest of my career. But many people love statistics, so I joke. But also, you're going to learn a lot about critical thinking, which is not going to be advantageous just in a research environment, but is going to help you solve all kinds of problems in all kinds of dimensions of your life. So this is really a big one. And of course, the scientific method. So learning how to solve a problem in a systematic and reproducible way is a cornerstone of how academic research is conducted. So, research interest. So it is wonderful to be able to be placed in an RLC that is doing the kind of work that you want to do for the rest of your life. Based on my experience, the likelihood of that happening is between slim and none. And that is because we're human beings, right? We learn more about the world, we change your interest area over time, and you need to have that flexibility to learn what you care about and change what you care about and grow as an academic and as a human being. That being said, it's great to be placed in something in a research learning community that appeals to you. However, you're going to learn so much in any academic environment. So many of the skills that I talked about on the previous 4 slides are skills that you could acquire even in a research learning community that isn't directly related to the thing that you're going to be doing in 20 years. So really think about how you can harvest the more important skills, which are to learn how to think critically, to develop yourself, to develop your professional portfolio, and to build a network within an academic community. So I'm going to take a second to look at a 2-minute video that I love to show. It's a nice introduction to our place in research and what you learn and how that can benefit you even in careers outside of academic research. Okay, so Jen is going to be much better at making this happen than me, thank you. I can't do 2 things at once. She just showed me how to do this right before this presentation. You want to see that? Okay. Yeah. Yep.
And creativity in science, engineering, technology, and math will be the drivers of tomorrow's economy. Jobs. That's the word. 4 letters. Jobs. And if you are not a participant on that frontier, you will trail behind it and possibly get left behind entirely.
Most American kids opt out of the harder math and science classes, as you know.
So I think most people opt out of hard things.
Many of those jobs that pay $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, you need a lot of calculus.
You do.
You need math.
You do.
You need science. You need physics.
Math needs better marketing. I don't know how to do it. Hire a marketing firm or something. There are people who say, I'll never need this math, these trig identities from 10th grade or 11th grade. Or maybe you never learned them. Here's the catch. Whether or not you ever again use the math that you learned in school, the act of having learned the math established a wiring in your brain that didn't exist before. And it's the wiring in your brain that makes you the problem solver.
Why did you become a scientist?
Since age 9, the universe chose me. Their first visit to the local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. Ever since then, had you asked me what I want to be when I grow up, that annoying question that adults always ask, I still would have said, an astrophysicist.
So there's a value to students studying math and science at high levels, even if they don't want to be running the Hayden Planetarium.
Even if you don't want to become a scientist, minimum you should ask of yourself, demand of yourself, is that you become scientifically literate. Better yet, scientifically literate and mathematically literate.
Why?
Because therein are the engines of problem solving in the world.
How does that connect to jobs and the bottom line, which is money?
Now you're valuable to an employer because companies want to innovate. And the companies that don't innovate, they wither on the vine. So the connection between STEM fields and financial stability of a nation is what needs to be established. That connection somehow is broken. People don't see it.
Why don't Americans see it, the connection?
Dare I say that maybe we're not trained to think that way? We're trained to think if you do A, then there must be B, cause and effect.
Do you think Americans understand that chain of events?
No.
Are they starting to?
No, you should be educated. And in the education, you should value science, engineering, technology, and math. If you do so, you get to innovate and invent new industries, new economies. If you invent new economies, everybody has jobs tomorrow. That's a chain of events. It's not A equals B. You've got to go through 3 other variables to get to D.
All right, so let's not listen to what you love. So we talked specifically about science and math, but I think that everything that Radhika had to say about problem solving
their party later.
and learning how to think applies to the process of research. So this is really what you're going to get from your research experience is learning how to solve problems in general, learning how to critically think, how to evaluate, how to analyze information in general, which is an incredibly transferable skill set. So there is no necessity to be specifically in the area that you want to direct your career for the rest of your working life, but rather to learn the general skills around research, the application of knowledge, analysis, evaluation, creativity, general cultivation of the intellect. You'll get that in any research experience. Okay, so I am continuing. Yes, so it's a two-way street. Relationship involves more than one person. That means that your mentor is also going to get a lot from your presence in the RLC. They themselves are going to get an opportunity to learn how to communicate effectively, how to engage in instruction and mentorship effectively, which is also an important part of professional development for people at the faculty level. They also get a whole other person from which they can harvest ideas, right? So undergraduates have great ideas. You're just learning how to develop and communicate them, and relationship with your mentor is a great space in which to continue to cultivate that skill. So think about what it is that you want to add to your RLC. Before we get into a little bit of an activity, I want to end the PowerPoint with talking about how it is that you can invest very little energy to get a very large output, and that is basic professionalism. So when you are interacting with academic faculty, or really anyone in the world, I think that I have found in my life, it is of tremendous value to be responsive. So when people send you emails, make sure you get back to them as quickly as you can, and make sure to treat them with respect. And that's going to mean different things in different contexts. I would suggest that when you are communicating with professors, that in emails you always address your emails with "Dear Professor," and they may invite you to call them by their first name. I encourage you guys to call me Radhika because I prefer that and I'm more comfortable with that. But when interacting with a professor that you don't know, a formal address and also a formal signature is a way that you can communicate respect to them. And be on time and be responsive. That's going to be really helpful for all of the EXITO staff with which you interact, so we can get information to you and get information from you, so we can set you up for a positive experience. So that's a little bit about professionalism. So I have distributed a worksheet. I want you guys to take some time to think about what it is that you want to get from these mentoring relationships. So there's 5 questions. I think we're not going to have enough time to get through all of them. We'll try and at least hit the first 3, starting with the first question, what it is that you want from a mentoring relationship. So you don't necessarily need to fill these worksheets out today. These are pieces of paper that I want you to take home with you so that you have this list of questions that you can percolate on over the course of the next year before it becomes time for you to actually select a research learning community. During this time, I want you guys to talk to each other about what you hope to get from a mentorship relationship. So spend about 5 minutes talking about that, and then we'll come back together and share what you may have come up with. So, thank you. Okay, so you guys have answered question 1, and maybe have generated more questions related to research experiences. So now is a great time for you to both ask questions and tell me what you think. So, what do you want from your relationship with your mentor? Yes?
I want to be like exposed to the things that I don't even know that I don't even know. You know?
Very nice. You want to be exposed to, I'm repeating everything you say because it doesn't end up on the video recording unless I do. So you would like to be exposed to things that you don't even know that you don't even know. That is a great attitude, and that is exactly what I would love to see from any EXITO scholar, right? This open-mindedness around the kind of experience that you're going to have is wonderful. So thank you for sharing. Yes?
We talked about how I have a balance in our mentor, about...
I'm actually just going to give you this.
Okay.
we talked about having a balance in our mentor of like having independence and still being some guidance, not having like a person that's hovering over every single little thing you do, but also someone that just doesn't let you go off and do your own thing. That can still structure you if you're going off topic or going off, you know. So having that balance would be something that we'd want.
So I think balance is a really key word there. So you don't want to be thrown to the wolves with a bunch of equipment and literature that you can't possibly understand. So some direction is really great, but nobody likes to be micromanaged, right? So you don't want someone correcting every word that you type into the computer screen. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think balance means something different to different scholars, and it's also going to mean something different in different types of research. You know, so if you're working in a particle physics lab with a, $6 million particle accelerator, I don't even know anything about physics, but whatever they have, you might want someone hovering over your shoulder to deflect some of the liability when it gets broken. But if you're in a biology lab and you're feeding bunny rabbits, maybe that's something that you prefer to do on your own. So yeah, balance is wonderful, and it means different things to different people in different contexts. Any other comments? Okay.
We said clear goals, expectations, and feedback.
I like this, yes. Clear goals and expectations and feedback. Those are wonderful, and we actually set you up for this. We actually ask you to sign a contract with your mentor before you begin your research experience so that you can have clear ideas about what it is they want from you and what it is that you want to give back, right? So when you're going to work, how you're going to work, how much you're going to work, all those things are great to establish in advance, in particular with undergraduates who are juggling academics and often other life commitments and complications. So that's an excellent point. Thank you for that. There are other?
One of the things we talked about was like lifelong connections and references that we can use to get a job, because I assume that's what we're all kind of here to do, is get a job in the future. So someone who, like, if I give all of my effort to them, they can verbalize that I did that to people who want to employ me.
Yeah, excellent. So getting references and networking, taking advantage of their relationships is really, really important. So yeah, that's great. And it's not just getting a job. I want you guys to get the job that you want, right? I want you guys to get good jobs.
So we were talking about confidence and encouragement.
Yesterday we heard the lecture from Raina about doing the inside work, and for me personally, doing that inside work so that I can be confident in everything I'm doing. So I'm looking for a personal connection with a mentor that's going to be challenging me to do that inside work to fulfill my potential. That's really wonderful. I think agency, a sense of ability and confidence around your academic career is really, really important, in particular in an environment that can be kind of intimidating sometimes. So the sooner you learn that intimidation is not a constructive emotion, I think the better you can, the faster you can move on to the part of your career that you really get to enjoy. That's really about learning things that you care about and discovering things and sharing things about the world that are going to shape it in a way that you want to shape it. So yeah, it's great. Thank you for that. Excellent. I'm so glad that Dr. Croft talked about that last night. Anyone else have a comment?
So I am hoping to find some inspiration in the relationship that I have with my mentor, and I think that that's probably going to best happen if I find someone who's really passionate about the work that they are doing.
Yeah, that's an excellent word. You guys are using really great keywords. So passion is one of the things that we get to have in academic environments. It's this gift, being able to infuse passion into the work that you do, and a really great model for that is going to be your academic mentor, so it's a great thing to look for. And I would hazard to guess that most, if not all, of our mentors are passionate about their work, because this is really a career path that is driven by passion. Just something you want to say?
Emotional intelligence.
That's a good one. So yeah, emotional intelligence, that's a good one. I think that means different things to different people, but being able to interact with and stop me if I'm going down a path that is incorrect, being able to interact with someone who responds not just to facts, but also to sort of the emotional content of a situation can make that relationship so much more productive. Get close? Yeah. Maybe. It may be less important to some people than others. I think there's a degree to which it's important to all of us. We're all emotional beings, and so I think being able to interact effectively on the emotional level with the people that we work with is really a good thing, and or a thing that sets up a positive relationship. So that's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not just keeping you from lunch. Lunch is keeping you from lunch. It's not here yet, which is why I think that this is a great chance for you guys to talk about the second question, which is, what kind of professional development is most important to you? So when you think about this illustrious career that you have that's going to culminate in winning a Nobel Prize, what kind of specific things are going to get you there? And how is your experience in your research learning community going to behoove acquiring those qualities? So let's give it 5 minutes to talk about that, and then we'll have a little conversation about it. I smell food, which means that it's time for lunch, but let's quickly talk about what specific things that you want to develop in yourself that you can get from your RLC. Anyone? Yes.
So one of the things I'd like to develop is when dealing with human volunteers or subjects, learning the ethics behind doing experiments like that, and how I can cultivate this is by practicing and reading more about it.
Excellent. Ethical interactions with human beings is something that we can all stand to learn about, but very specifically in a research context, if you want to work with human subjects in the future, that's a great skill. It's a very advanced skill and a great skill that you can get from your research experience at EXITO. So thank you for that. We'll take one more, and then if there is one more, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
I'd like to develop just interview skills and lingo as well, just so that way when I am being asked questions, I know how to answer them in a very professional manner and something that's kind of pertinent to what is being asked.
Yeah, so professional, I'm going to call that decorum, is not an innate talent. I think undergraduates sometimes think you just have to be born with that, but no, it's a skill that you learn with experience. And this is the kind of experience that can develop that skill. So yeah, I think you're all going to have it in a couple of years.